The U.S., meanwhile, has announced sanctions against 33 Russian individuals and entities over what it calls Moscow's malign activities. U.S. State Department said those blacklisted are linked with Russian defense and intelligence sectors. According to the State Department official, some of those sanctioned are suspected of meddling in U.S. elections. Washington's also imposed sanctions on the Chinese military for buying jets and missiles from Russia. The U.S. says the ultimate aim of the anti-China sanctions is to punish Russia for its alleged interference in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. Moscow has repeatedly announced accusations of election meddling are unsubstantiated. Joining us out of Ontario is Jason Unruhe, political commentator. Hello, Jason. Pleasure to have you back on the program. How do you impose sanctions on China to punish Russia, Jason?
Well, you can do it if you feel like it. You can do it if you want to. It doesn't make all that much sense. I suppose if you're trying to punish Russia for having a trading partner, and then other people maybe get the message that if they try to trade with Russia, they're going to be punished as well. This is all part of a larger plan by the United States to undermine the rising powers of both Russia and China. I mean, it's very obvious to many political commentators, many people who pay attention to these kinds of global events, that the United States is waning in its position as the global hegemonic power, and that this position is being openly challenged by both Russia and China, most specifically in the sphere of influence in the Middle East, where Russia is wholly undermining U.S. efforts to try to overthrow the government of Bashar al-Assad inside of Syria, to try to replace it with some kind of U.S.-friendly regime. China openly is sending a rebuke to the United States economically by the Belt and Road Initiative, by engaging in so many African countries who've been either ignored or exploited by the United States in the past. So I think this is much of the aging empire lashing out at its challengers, trying to maintain its position. I think it's a very flimsy pretext of trying to push all this through. Not yet has any shred of evidence of Russian collusion with regards to manipulation of the 2016 presidential election actually been made public. And that's one of the main points that I always like to hit, is that we're not seeing what it is that they're claiming. It's the proof for the reasons for the hostilities. It was the same thing with the claim of weapons of mass destruction for Iraq. They repeated over and over again that they were there, yet the public was never made aware of any piece of evidence whatsoever. And we're seeing a repeat of that here with Russia, when if it's so overwhelming, the evidence, but they can't let us see or know anything that has gone on or any connection whatsoever. And then even when you have the leaders of social media coming in and even saying that there's really no evidence of this whatsoever, half of the ads regarding what was taking place on Facebook occurred after the election. The total amount was about less than 1% of the election ads in total for the entire election season. I think it's pretty obvious that the United States is using this as a justification to go ahead and place sanctions on Russia. They're a hard thing to do legally without some kind of framework. The World Trade Organization is theoretically there to prevent that kind of thing, unless you have a national security pretext or you have some kind of wrongdoing by one of the state actors that would justify doing so. But I think this, in the end, is an act by the United States to try to undermine both China and Russia for standing up to the United States in this new emerging global atmosphere.
And you mentioned evidence. We've heard dozens of people getting sanctioned for this alleged Russian meddling. So obviously, if you have so many names on this list, you have to really show the world how elaborate this campaign was. You have to, make it look good on paper, make it look good on a chart, let people see why. To date, we heard just a couple weeks ago, about a month and a half ago, 12 or 13 Russian intelligence officials. Then we heard military personnel. We've heard private business guys, all kinds of Russian entities and individuals being sanctioned because of this pretext of supposed Russian alleged meddling in the U.S. presidential election. So if it's such an elaborate campaign, Why not lay it out in black and white for the world to see?
Frankly, I'm fairly certain that there's nothing to show. I mean, we've come across every now and then someone who's been questioned about the alleged Russian collusion, coming out and saying that they didn't have anything, and that we saw the recent individual whose name escapes my mind at the moment, who said that the FBI didn't have any evidence of it whatsoever. There was nothing to find, and this is very much like the weapons of mass destruction claim. Supposedly, everybody knows that to be true. Every single intelligence agency in the United States says that it's true, but yet not one shred of evidence whatsoever is being made straight out to the public. And this is what demonstrates to me and many other people that this is just a straight up lie. There's no evidence being brought to the public, and that should raise a lot of red flags and make everyone very suspicious.
Thanks for joining us and for your input, Mr. Jason Unruhe, political commentator there, joining us out of Ontario, Canada.